SIMUCUBE Baseplate is an excellent bit of kit that some would argue, if you have the ActivePedal Ultimates or the ActivePedal Pros, is essential. If you wish to watch my review of the SIMUCUBE Baseplate, I will leave a link to this video at the top of your screens now. In this video, I'm going to show you how to easily put the SIMUCUBE Baseplate together, put the active pedals on the baseplate, and more importantly for me, which was essential, install a slider so you can easily move the baseplate forwards and then backwards, easily adjusting the pedals for anybody else that wants to sit on a rig apart from yourself. Let's go.
So before we start any assembly, regardless of brand, I think it's always nice to get everything out and make sure that everything is accounted for to prevent further frustration or future frustration later down the line. So with the SIMUCUBE baseplate, you've got a footrest, a smaller piece of aluminium profile, and then 3 equivalent size pieces of aluminium profile to go distal to the footrest. Then you've got these side supports here, and you want to make sure these are orientated correctly. I'll point these out just here. You've got a slat here and a slat there, which is similar to the other side, and you want to make sure that those are positioned towards the end of the footrest. You'll notice over here, I've already positioned all of the bolts in correct sizes, so I don't have to hunt around throughout the assembly, and you should have 20 M6 20mm bolts, okay, which we can assemble, and I'll show you how to assemble them just in a second, because there is also a split washer and a washer to assemble, and you'll have a selection of varied length M8 bolts in order to mount this to your chosen simulator. There are going to be 20 M6 bolts to install, and you need to make sure that you have the washers installed the correct way round. This is a split washer, so you need to make sure that that goes on first, and then you want to put a secondary washer, which is not a split washer, to follow that. You want to rinse and repeat that for all 20 bolts, and then you're ready to go. To start with, what I suggest we do is we take the footrest and just place that aside, because we're not going to need to use that in the first instance. Remember, this side is the side the footrest will go on, this is the side that does not. One caveat I would note before we start, please take note of the smaller piece of aluminium profile. You'll notice that it is smooth one side and there is a groove on the other. The groove faces down. Another thing you will notice is that in each piece of aluminium profile, SIMUCUBE have already pre-threaded these, so it's basically just a case of screwing in the bolts in the correct positions. So to start with, let's address the first bit of aluminium profile here, and they simply align with the holes as they stand on the side plate. So there's really nothing to mess up here, so we'll fast forward through this bit and we'll move on to the next section.
Remember not to tighten all of the bolts at this point, because you'll want to do your final tighten later on.
SIMUCUBE do provide an Allen key that's appropriate size, but I highly recommend getting this set of Allen keys here. It provides a ball tip, which means you don't have to be completely coaxial when you insert it in order to screw things in, and I'll leave a link to the video where I talk about these just above on your screen right now if you wish to check them out.
Remember when we're doing this that you just want to put these in finger tight to start off with, because then you're going to move on to the other side as we're doing here and just introduce those by hand to start off with. Make sure that you've got the washer and the spring washer on also, and then we're going to be doing a final tighten.
I just want to briefly mention where we're going to be placing the smaller piece of aluminium profile, because you'll notice along the edge here there are a number of different holes. You want to leave a gap, so leave that one free, and you're aiming for this hole here and this hole here, and the last 2 remain free. If you do that, there's no mistakes. Remember to make sure that the aluminium groove is facing downwards. Simply slot it into the correct position and then introduce your M6 bolts. Once all the bolts have been inserted by hand, you're then ready for a final tighten. You'll notice this moves a little bit, so you can either slide it up or you can slide it down. From the looks of it, it doesn't make a heap of difference as to the overall construct of the whole thing, so I just set this as close to this end of the base plate as you possibly can. Now we can tighten everything up. Right, once everything's tightened up, that is that. So large, 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 a small one with the groove facing down, and then we're now ready to put on our foot plate. Attaching the foot plate is nice and simple, and the holes that we are aiming for in this case are this hole here, so the long slat, and the long slat here. And what that's going to enable us to do is we can tweak the foot plate to whatever angle we want and whatever inclination, and adjust it to our own specifications. The foot plate itself is nicely constructed because it's got pre-threaded attachments here and here on both sides, so you don't have to do any mucking around with any bolts. I think that's a really nice touch. All we're going to do is simply line up the foot plate, and then I would suggest once again manually inserting the M6 bolts, hand tie those, just get them finger tight. Once you've got this roughly attached, I would just do a cursory tighten just so things don't rattle around, but you know, you are going to adjust this once you're on the simulator and you've got your feet out and you're trying to judge the exact correct height for your own legs and feet. So that's pretty much the end of this bit. Let's head to the simulator and we'll look at how to position the seat slider, the appropriate measurements to make sure the mounting holes are all lined up satisfactorily, how to balance it, and then ultimately fixing the base plate to the rig so we can move the whole construct up and down the rig for ease of comfort and multiple users.
For this next bit, you're going to need to buy and install a Sparco seat slider. I will leave an affiliate link to this item in the description down below. For a detailed guide on how to mount the slider to an aluminium profile rig, I will link my SimLab P1X build video, which shows you how to mount it to any aluminium profile rig, and I'll also link it timestamped down below in the description. To get the SIMUCUBE baseplate to fit to the seat slider, you're going to need to move the seat slider to the corresponding distances shown on the screen now. It's important that these are absolutely accurate because there's not much room for error when mounting the baseplate. At this point, I would also like to highlight it is important to have the slider handle facing away from you and not towards you, otherwise you're not going to be able to pull it up and slide the pedal deck once the pedal and the deck are all fitted. You will also notice I fitted a spacer to the sliders. I think this makes the base plate easier to fit. You will need 4 of these with a corresponding washer and a corresponding nut. I'll link these in the description below. Once these are all fitted at the correct distances apart, it is simply a case of dropping the SIMUCUBE baseplate on top of the spacers and tightening with the M8 16mm bolts. These are the shorter ones of the ones you get in the set. What I would recommend is loosening off the spacers and then introducing the M8 bolts, because you're going to need a little bit of play in order to get them to align properly, and then you can sequentially tighten everything up to get it sitting nice and tight. Finally, we're going to mount the pedals to the base plate, and we're just going to do this on the stool here for demonstration purposes. I would recommend doing this on the rig once the base plate is mounted. You'll see here I have highlighted the aluminium slots in which you want to slot in your springboard loaded T-nuts. These just push in. And you want to make sure that you use 6 T-nuts. Now, the manual says you can use 4, but they also give you 6 and you can fit 6 in here, so I don't know why you wouldn't have that extra bit of security. You then want to take the fully threaded M6 bolt that they give you with the pedals, and then you want to attach a washer through the slot in the ActivePedal and straight into the T-nut, and there you have it. Behold the SIMUCUBE ActivePedal baseplate securely attached to a seat slider, allowing you to move it forwards and backwards at your pleasure. I'll be having a fair bit of SIMUCUBE content coming up because obviously these are now mounted to the rig, so if you found value in this and you want to see more, please consider hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye for now.